Hello, lovelies. I'm Pastor Leah Scholl from Wake Forest Baptist Church, and I'm so grateful that you've joined us today. Hear these words as a blessing. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Jarvis Masters is the author of a book called Finding Freedom. He's a Buddhist monk and a prisoner on death row. He tells the story of having his TV on in his cell without the sound because he's using it to read, the light to read. Every once in a while, he looks up at the screen, then yells to the people down the cell block to ask what's happening. The first time someone yells back, "It's the Ku Klux Klan." They're all yelling and complaining about how it's the blacks and the Jews who are responsible for all these problems. Later he yells again, "Hey, what's happening now?" And a voice calls back, "That's the Greenpeace folks. They're demonstrating about the fact that the rivers are being polluted and the trees are being cut down and the animals are being hurt and our earth is being destroyed." And later, he yells again, "Now what's going on?" Then someone says, "That's the U.S. Senate, and that guy who's up there now talking, he's blaming the other guys, the other side, the other political party for all the difficulty this country is in." Jarvis says, "I learned something here. Sometimes they're wearing Klan outfits. Sometimes they're wearing Greenpeace outfits. Sometimes they're wearing suits and ties, but they all have the same angry faces." Y'all, what the world needs right now is fewer angry faces. Less anger put into the atmosphere. Less hatred between political enemies, between neighbors, between even family members. This, of all the times in my lifetime and in your lifetime too, this moment requires that we get over ourselves and do our work together. Our psalmist today says, "Have mercy upon us, O Lord, have mercy upon us, for we have had more than enough of contempt." The last few years of increasing exposure to white supremacy, the attack of LGBTQ folks, the black lives lost to police, and the loss of healthcare access, everything. Haven't we had more than enough of contempt? As you know, resentment is like eating rat poison and waiting for the other person to die. It was only a year ago that we considered Desmond and Imfo's Tutu's most excellent work, The Book of Forgiveness. Here the Tutus offer a fourfold path to forgiveness, and it starts with telling the story. There's no particular right or wrong way to do this. It's just tell the story. Whether you write it in a notebook, tell a close friend, a therapist, your pastor, just about anyone. And remember that the details may change as you tell the story, and that's okay. It's your story of harm. And the way we heal ourselves is that we tell the story in our way. In fact, one expert on forgiveness, Dr. Frederick Luskin, founder of the Stanford Forgiveness Project, recommends that you change the story, your story, from that of a victim to that of the hero. Remember that ultimately you may want to tell your story of harm to the one who has harmed you, but you don't have to rush that process. Some of you might be the trusted person with whom someone shares the story. A little hint here. Listen, don't try to fix. Don't minimize, don't advise, and don't respond with your own loss or grief. Keep confidentiality, offer your love and caring, empathize, and give support. And back to you who's telling your story. After you do it, Tutu says to name the hurt. This means to identify the feelings that your story brings up for you. I need you to know that the pain we feel, the emotional pain we feel, is real. Studies show that a psychological wound stimulates that same part of the brain that is stimulated when there is a physical wound. Our brains process and feel physical and emotional injuries the same way. An important thing to remember about your feelings is this: there is no such thing as a wrong feeling, a bad feeling, or an invalid feeling. Feelings just are. And naming your feelings is owning your feelings. The next step is to grant forgiveness. It sounds so easy. Oh, just grant forgiveness. It's easy. The Tutu's right. We choose forgiveness because it is how we find freedom and keep from remaining trapped in an endless loop of telling our stories and naming our hurts. There is power in saying, "I forgive you." Just those few words will release something in you. And you may have to say those words many times before it's fully true, but it will loosen something in you. I forgive you. The last step in the fourfold path to forgiveness is to renew or release the relationship. As you might guess, this is a difficult decision-making and implementation phase. Ideally, the Tutus say, the preference is always to renew. Prior to deciding, ask yourself what you need from the person or people who have harmed you. That can include an apology, an explanation, even a tangible object. It may also include never seeing the person again. It is also best to look at your part in the conflict and take responsibility for that. It's important to recognize that any renewed relationship will not be the same. Boundaries, trust, and steadfastness all have been broken, and so must be strengthened, and the relationship will not be the same. It is an option not to renew a relationship too. Sometimes trust is broken beyond repair. Sometimes relationships are not safe to renew and must be released. Only you can make that decision. I want to remind you of one thing, and that is our shared humanity. We live in a time when it's much easier to see people as single-sided, either good or bad, never in between. But we must release this kind of thinking to do the work of real forgiveness. We are all people who harm, and we are all people who have been harmed. It's the nature of our humanity and the nature of suffering in our world. It's just who we are. And in order to forgive, we have to see that others are both good and bad, and that so are we ourselves. It is in forgiving that we can be forgiven. And in doing this work, you will surely discover that you too need to seek forgiveness, either from others or yourself. It's important because we need far fewer angry faces. Amen? Amen.